first transmission arrived as a scream disguised as data. It did not begin with language, it began with sound. A raw, distorted burst of atmospheric vibration captured by a failing probe microphone somewhere above a blue-white storm system. Analysts later reconstructed it as wind interacting with metallic wreckage. But that explanation came long after the recording had already circulated through half the Orion arm under a more compelling label: human vocalization detected during terminal impact. The myth spread faster than the signal itself. Claimed that a human exposed to vacuum breach and plasma fire had continued broadcasting coherent speech while descending through hurricane-force winds on a gravity well world classified as biologically lethal to 97% of known intelligent species. The myth was wrong. The truth was worse. Because the sound was not a human screaming, it was a human laughing. The expedition vessel Axiom of Mercy entered high orbit over the Forbidden World under absolute silence protocols. No external beacons, no diplomatic hails, no standard contact lattice. Even its drive emissions were dampened to the minimum threshold required to maintain orbital stability against the planet's brutal gravitational gradient. To the distant observer, it would have appeared as nothing more than another piece of orbital debris caught in the endless graveyard circling the blue planet below. Commander Thakel stood alone in the forward observation chamber, crest flattened in involuntary tension as the planet rotated into view across the viewport arc. The world filled half the sky, luminous oceans fractured by storm bands the size of continents, land masses scarred with tectonic ridges and volcanic plumes. Lightning storms crawled across the atmosphere like neural activity in an exposed brain. Designation: Sol 3, local name, Earth, Galactic classification, Deathworld Tier 9, absolute prohibition. The classification had been issued nearly 4 centuries earlier by the Interstellar Biosafety Council after the first automated surveys returned casualty rates that defied statistical modeling. No sentient species, it was believed, could have originated here. The gravity alone exceeded standard evolutionary tolerances. Atmospheric oxygen concentrations bordered on biochemical aggression. Surface temperatures swung between cryogenic and hyperthermal extremes across seasonal cycles. Native megafauna displayed predatory adaptations typically seen only in engineered war organisms. Yet intelligent signals had been detected. Tool use, energy manipulation, planetary-scale industrial alteration, orbital debris fields consistent with primitive launch technologies, and most disturbing of all, weapon signatures. The Council's conclusion had been unanimous and immediate. If intelligent life had somehow emerged here, it represented an evolutionary anomaly with unpredictable lethality potential. Direct contact was forbidden. Observation was restricted to remote probes only. The system was sealed. And still, the rumors persisted. Deathworlders. The word had begun as a fringe hypothesis among xenobiologists fascinated by extremophile ecosystems. It evolved into a cautionary theory within military academies. Then it became a myth whispered in exploration fleets that somewhere in the sealed Sol system, a species had evolved, not despite a lethal environment, but because of it. A species shaped by constant catastrophe. By predators, disease, starvation, gravity, and war. A species that survived not by harmony, but by dominance over its own world. A species called human? Thakel had dismissed the stories as anthropocentric projection. No biosphere that hostile could produce stable technological intelligence. Evolution favored efficiency and sustainability. Deathworld conditions selected for rapid reproduction and aggression, not cognition. Council's prohibition was likely precautionary excess. Then the derelict probe had been recovered at the edge of the heliopause. It had not been one of theirs. Its construction was crude by galactic standards. Alloy joints imperfect, shielding inconsistent. Our systems dangerously volatile. Yet it had traveled interstellar distance on a trajectory that matched no known propulsion doctrine. It carried no diplomatic markers, no species identification lattice, only an onboard archive encoded in primitive electromagnetic storage blocks. The archive contained images. Storm oceans, swallowing cities of stone and glass. Continents burning under atmospheric bombardment. Sheens crossing deserts of irradiated sand. Small, fragile-bodied organisms, standing upright amid devastation, manipulating tools and weapons with unsettling dexterity. They displayed cooperative behavior and ritual signaling. They buried their dead. They built shelters against climate extremes that should have annihilated them. They also killed each other in numbers that exceeded extinction-level thresholds. And throughout the archive, in multiple contexts of injury, disaster, and combat, there were audio captures of human vocalization during lethal stress events, not screams, laughter. The probe's final transmission log contained a partial translation attempt generated by its own onboard heuristic matrix. The phrase repeated across multiple files, "If we're going down, we're taking the sky with us." Thiel had read that line 57 times. It did not translate cleanly into any known survival framework. Now standing in orbit above the origin world of the species that built the probe, the commander felt the weight of a realization spreading through his cognition like cold fluid. The Council had not sealed Sol because humans were weak anomalies. They had sealed it because humans were dangerous. "Commander," came a voice behind him, soft but edged with unease. "Surface sensor arrays are fully deployed. We are receiving environmental telemetry." The Kel did not turn immediately. His gaze remained fixed on the planet's terminator line, where night-swallowed continents and city-like constellations ignited in the darkness. Artificial illumination across half a world. A technological civilization still active, still expanding, despite every lethal variable the planet imposed. "Report," he said. Senior Analyst Virel approached the viewport, ocular membranes flickering as she attempted to reconcile sensor data with expectation models. Her species had evolved in low-gravity ocean worlds, where temperature variance rarely exceeded a few degrees, and predation pressures were minimal. She had trained for xenobiological hazard assessment across dozens of hostile ecosystems. Nothing in her experience matched this. "Gravity at surface mean 1.02 standard," she said slowly. "Atmospheric oxygen, 21%. Nitrogen dominant. Trace reactive compounds within safe tolerance for carbon-water biochemistry, but oxidation potential remains. Extreme microbial density is off-scale. Viral diversity exceeds known galactic maxima by 2 orders of magnitude. Megafauna biomass distribution indicates apex predator presence across all major biomes." She paused, crest rippling in disbelief. "Commander, this world is not merely lethal. It is actively trying to kill everything that lives on it. Continuously." Thiel inclined his head. "And yet something survived." Virel's gaze shifted to the city lights below. Yes, something did. A new signal thread opened in the chamber as tactical liaison Kreth joined the feed from the operations deck. His tone carried controlled urgency. "Commander, we have located the source coordinates of the derelict probe's launch trajectory. Planetary surface region, northern continental landmass, mid-latitude. Terrain classification, mixed forest and urban industrial." "Any current activity?" Thiel asked. Pause. Then, yes. The viewport display shifted, magnifying a region of the planet's night side. Clouds parted under sensor penetration. A city emerged, sprawling across river channels and terrain ridges. Illumination grids forming geometric networks visible from orbit. Energy output signatures spiked across multiple sectors. Industrial heat plumes, atmospheric emissions, electromagnetic traffic saturating the local spectrum. Human civilization in full function. Virel's respiration accelerated. "They are still here," Kreth continued. "Commander, there is more. We are detecting repeated kinetic events within the urban zone. Explosive signatures, structural collapse, fires, population movement patterns consistent with mass evacuation or conflict." Thiel finally turned from the viewport. "Conflict with whom?" Another pause. "We cannot identify a non-human combatant," Kreth said. "All signatures are of human origin." The chamber fell silent, except for the distant hum of containment fields. Virel spoke first, voice thin. "They are destroying their own habitat." "On a world already this hostile?" Kreth's response carried a trace of something unfamiliar to his species. Dread. "Yes." Thiel looked back to the burning city below. Even from orbit, heat blooms flickered where structures had been moments earlier. Transport networks glowed with motion. Aircraft signatures crossed the sky in dense patterns. Communication bursts spiked and collapsed across the spectrum. Species evolved on a planet that never stopped trying to kill it. A species that survived by mastering catastrophe. Apparently, a species at war with itself on its own Deathworld, Commander Varel said quietly. The Council's prohibition exists for a reason. We should withdraw. Observation only. No contact. The Kel did not answer immediately. His attention had caught on a new data stream scrolling across the tactical overlay. Autonomous ground probes deployed by the Axiom of Mercy hours earlier were transmitting localized sensor feeds from within the urban conflict zone. One feed stabilized. Visual: a human individual amid structural debris. Body mass low. Protective covering damaged. Dermal integrity compromised across multiple regions. Blood loss indicators critical. Surrounding environment: fire, falling debris, atmospheric particulates at toxic density. Probability of survival negligible. The human moved, not away from danger, toward it. The individual dragged a larger object, another human, conscious or dead, across broken terrain while overhead detonations continued. Respiratory distress markers spiked. Locomotion efficiency degraded, yet motion persisted. Step-by-step collapse. Rise again. Continue. Varel whispered. It is mortally injured. Kreth said nothing. The Kel watched as the smaller human reached a partially collapsed transport vehicle. With remaining motor capacity beyond expected thresholds, it forced open the structure and pulled the larger body inside. Then it slumped, physiological readings crashing. For 3.2 seconds, the smaller human exhibited no detectable vital signs. Then cardiac activity resumed. Irregular, weak, but present. The human lived. Against all environmental and biological predictions, it lived. And in the audio channel, faint beneath the roar of fire and collapse, came a sound. A breath, then another, and then impossibly a laugh. The same tonal pattern recorded in the derelict probe archive, vocalization produced not in triumph, not in safety, but in proximity to death. Varel recoiled from the feed. Why would it express amusement? It is dying. Fakel felt the cold, fluid realization deepen. No, he said softly. It is surviving. Kreth's voice returned, strained. Commander, additional data. Long-range sensors have intercepted encrypted orbital transmissions originating from within the Sol system. Not from this planet. It's from deeper inside the system. High energy. Military architecture beyond current human surface technology. Thakal turned sharply. Unknown human faction? Possibly, Kreth said, or something else. The signal header contains a recurring Terran linguistic structure. Translation matrix partial. Phrase resolves 2. Protocol ascendant. The words settled in the chamber like ash. Varel whispered, What is protocol ascendant? Thakel looked again at Earth, the storms, the fires, the cities. The laughing injured human who refused to deand understood that the question was larger than any single faction. What had a species become, forged in a world where survival required defiance of physics, biology, and probability itself? And what would happen if that species turned its full adaptive brutality outward beyond its Deathworld, into the wider galaxy? Below them, on the planet that should have been sterile, human civilization burned and endured simultaneously. War and rescue intertwined, destruction and persistence inseparable. The derelict probe's final phrase echoed in Thakel's mind. If we're going down, we're taking the sky with us, he spoke, voice low. Council prohibition assumed humans were contained by their world, Kreth said. Yes, Commander. Thakel watched the city lights flicker under smoke. And someone, he said, has just declared war on the deadliest species on Earth. The words hung there in assessment, a warning, and perhaps a prophecy. Because if Protocol Ascendant was real, if a hidden Terran command or ancient human contingency had awakened beyond the planet, then the conflict consuming the city below might be only the smallest fracture in a species preparing to unleash itself. And the galaxy had no concept of what humanity truly was. Thakel turned toward the recording node, knowing the transmission would be archived across 1,000 worlds despite Council restrictions. Some truths could not remain sealed once seen. You're watching Deathworlders HFY Sci-Fi, he said, tone carrying documentary gravity across the channel. Where humanity's impossible evolution becomes the galaxy's greatest fear. He let the image of the laughing, dying, but living human remain on screen. Tell us, he continued, if a species survives by defying death itself, what happens when that species decides survival is not enough? The burning city rotated slowly beneath the axiom of mercy as alarms from deeper in the Sol system began to rise. Like, comment, and share if you believe Deathworld evolution creates heroes or monsters, Thakel said. Because in Part 2, we follow the signal of Protocol Ascendant, discover what humanity has been building in the dark between its wars. The transmission cut to black, and Earth kept burning, and humans kept living. Orbit decayed by intention. The axiom of mercy shifted from high observation altitude into a lower, tighter path around Earth, slipping beneath the densest debris bands and into the upper fringes of atmosphere where drag began to whisper across the hull. It was a maneuver no Council-sanctioned expedition had ever authorized over a Tier 9 Deathworld. Orbital decay exposed a vessel to environmental unpredictability, particulate storms, ionization layers, lightning arcs, capable of sensor disruption, even ballistic ejecta from tectonic events below. Commander Thakel authorized it anyway. The planet filled the viewport now not as distant spectacle but as looming presence. Cloud towers rose kilometers into the stratosphere, anvils of vapor glowing with internal lightning webs. Atmospheric density gradients flickered across instrument panels in chaotic bands, convection currents shifting faster than predictive models could stabilize. Local gravity gradient increasing, tactical liaison Kreth reported. Orbital velocity compensation holding, but structural stress is above recommended limits. Thakel did not look away from the world. Maintain descent, he said. Behind him, senior analyst Varel adjusted bioscan overlays, her crest drawn tight against her skull. She had spent the last cycle compiling comparative Deathworld classifications across the known galaxy. Searching for context to understand what Earth represented, there was none, Commander, she said quietly. I have completed cross-referencing against all Council Deathworld tiers. Thakel inclined his head. Report. Virel brought up a hologrid. Thousands of worlds categorized by lethality metrics, gravity load, atmospheric reactivity, predation index, geological instability, pathogen density, radiation flux. Worlds across the grid glowed in graded spectra of hazard. Earth burned at the extreme edge. Deathworld tier classifications assume lethal factors are localized, she explained. High gravity, but stable climate. Toxic atmosphere, but low predation. Extreme predators, but limited disease vectors. Survivable niches exist even on Tier 8 worlds. Evolution occurs within protected ecological corridors. She magnified Earth's stratosphere. This world has no corridors. Every lethal factor overlaps. Gravity above galactic norm. Oxygen concentration high enough to accelerate oxidative tissue damage. Microbial ecosystems continuously mutate. Apex predators across all biomes. Plate tectonics generating frequent seismic disruption. Seasonal climate swings that trigger planetary scale storms. Solar radiation flux within the upper tolerance for carbon-water life. She paused, voice tightening. Commander, this is not a Deathworld by Council definition. It is a continuous extinction event. Thakel absorbed the words. And yet, he said, humans evolved here. Yes, Varel whispered. Which means every human alive is the descendant of an unbroken lineage that survived constant planetary hostility for hundreds of millions of years. The implications settled heavy in the chamber. Deathworld species elsewhere evolved to endure one catastrophe. Humans had endured all of them. The ship dipped lower. Atmospheric plasma flickered across the hull in violet sheets as friction increased. Below, the planet's surface resolved into detail. Mountain chains twisted like exposed bone. Oceans convulsing under cyclonic systems. Deserts scarred by impact craters and lava flows. Life everywhere. Forests dense enough to conceal megafauna signatures the size of armored carriers. River systems crawling with biological motion. Polar ice fields fractured by seasonal collapse. A biosphere in perpetual competition. Megafauna scan, Thakel ordered. Kreth routed the data. Icons blossomed across the display, terrestrial predators massing hundreds of kilograms, marine leviathans longer than the axiom itself, airborne hunters riding thermals at altitudes that defied flight models. Commander Kreth said, Many of these organisms exhibit predatory adaptations optimized against other large, fast tool-using prey. Humans, Varel said. Yes, Kreth replied. The Kel considered the evolutionary equation. On most worlds, intelligence emerged where predation pressure was low enough to allow cognitive specialization. Tools replaced claws. Cooperation replaced armor. Brain mass replaced speed. On Earth, intelligence had emerged under continuous predation by creatures already optimized for killing large animals, which meant humans had evolved intelligence not as alternative to violence, but as its extension. A new feed opened from ground probes still operating in the conflict-tridden city. Fires had spread overnight. Structural collapse zones expanded. Human movement patterns remained chaotic yet purposeful. Evacuation corridors, rescue clusters, combat signatures. Despite devastation, organized response persisted. Survival behavior under catastrophic stress remains coordinated, Varel said. Even unarmed civilians are assisting injured conspecifics. The Kel watched a cluster of humans forming a chain to move debris away from a trapped vehicle. Their physiology showed exhaustion markers, injury, smoke inhalation, yet they continued. Why? Varel asked softly. On this world, energy expenditure during crisis should favor self-preservation. Assisting others reduces individual survival probability. Thakel answered without looking away, because their survival probability has never been individual. Varel turned to him. Earth does not allow solitary survival, he said. No organism here endures alone. Cooperation is not optional, it is the only viable strategy. Humans are not individuals in evolutionary terms. They're networked survival systems. The idea resonated against everything the Council believed about intelligence. Most advanced species evolved in environments where cooperation emerged gradually after stability. Humans evolved cooperation inside chaos, which meant their social bonds were not cultural. They were biological imperatives. A new alert pulsed. Commander Kreth said, voice sharpened, "We have located anomalous structures outside the urban zone. Coordinates match pre-industrial ruins cataloged in the derelict probe archive. Terrain. Forested highlands. The viewport shifted to the nightside continent where the conflict city lay. Infrared penetration peeled back canopy cover. Beneath dense forest, geometric forms, emerged straight lines, right angles, buried grids, ruins. Not ancient stone-like primitive human architecture elsewhere. These were different. Alloy composition unknown, Kreth reported. Radiation shielding present. Structural decay minimal, despite vegetation overgrowth. Estimated age, uncertain. Varel leaned forward. This material is not consistent with early human metallurgy. The Kel felt unease stir, meaning, Adol said slowly, either humans possessed advanced materials technology far earlier than their surface history indicates, or this site is not part of their known development trajectory. Silence settled. Kreth added, ground probe insertion possible. Environmental hazards high, but manageable. The Kel did not hesitate. Deploy. The probe descended through cloud layers, skimming treetops before settling among root systems that had swallowed sections of buried structure. Visual feeds stabilized. Moss-coated surfaces, collapsed entryways, angular corridors leading into darkness. It looked abandoned. It also looked intact. Radiation levels within containment thresholds, Kreth said. Power signatures faint but present beneath surface. Active? Varel asked. Yes. Thakel's gaze hardened. Kreth hesitated. We cannot determine age with current data, but structural weathering suggests tens of thousands of years at minimum. Varel's respiration faltered. Humans did not possess industrial technology tens of thousands of years ago. Thakel said nothing. The probe entered the ruin. Interior walls bore marking symbols etched into alloy panels. Declarative, functional. Repeating sequences of geometric language similar to the encrypted header of the intercepted orbital signal. Protocol ascendant. Commander Kreth said quietly, "We are detecting low-frequency transmissions originating from deeper within the structure. Encoded, non-atmospheric, directed upward. Toward orbit," Varel said. Yes, Thakel felt the cold realization expand again. A buried human installation, older than recorded civilization, still transmitting into space. Descend further, he ordered. The probe navigated collapsed corridors, debris fields, rude intrusion. Eventually it reached a chamber sealed by intact alloy doors. The surface bore human linguistic markers in archaic form protal, language ancestors of modern Terran scripts. Translation matrix struggled and resolved partial meaning. Survival archive node, O3 activation, extinction evil event, authorized species. Homo sapiens Virel stared. Extinction evil, archive. Greth's voice dropped. Commander, if this translation is correct? It is, Thykel said, because he understood now. Earth had never been stable. Asteroid impacts, supervolcanoes, ice ages, radiation spikes, pandemics, predation cascades. The planet itself cycled through mass extinctions repeatedly. Any species surviving here long enough to become intelligent would face inevitable annihilation events, unless it planned for them. Humans expected extinction, Thykel said. Virel turned slowly. Expected. Prepared for it, he corrected. The probe breached the chamber. Inside, the darkness held order. Rows of containment vaults. Biological storage units. Data cores. Genetic archives. Mechanical assemblies sealed against time. All dormant, except one central column emitting faint power. On its surface, a symbol repeated across Terran history. A spiral intersected by a vertical line. Human survival iconography, Commander Greth said, voice unsteady. This is a species-level redundancy system, Virel whispered, a backup civilization. Thykel stepped closer to the feed as if proximity could alter truth. Humans had not merely survived a Deathworld. They had assumed their world would kill them eventually, and built mechanisms to outlast it. And the intercepted orbital signal labeled Protocol Ascendant, likely awakening those mechanisms. Political context flooded his mind. The Council's fear, the prohibition, containment doctrine. They believed humans dangerous because of aggression. They'd underestimated the real threat. A species evolved under continuous extinction pressure does not assume survival. It ensures it. Greth spoke again. Commander. Additional translation from chamber inscriptions. Text scrolled. IF surface biosphere collapses. If civilization fractures, if contact lost, archive nodes will ascend. Species continuity is mandatory. Virel's crest flattened in horror. Ascend to where? Greth's sensors traced the faint transmissions again. Upward through atmosphere into space, deeper into the Sol system. Toward whatever human infrastructure waited beyond Earth. Thykel understood the implication in full. Humans had ceded their own extinction insurance across their planet long before reaching spaceflight. And now something war, disaster, or deliberate activation was triggering those ancient systems. Which meant the conflict burning in the city below was not random violence. It was the beginning of species-level mobilization. He felt fear, then not of human brutality, but of human persistence. A Deathworld species that refused extinction. Virel spoke, voice trembling between awe and dread. Commander, humans are not merely adapted to survive catastrophe. They are engineered culturally, biologically, technologically, to continue after it. Yes, Thykel said. And if Protocol Ascendant is activating these nodes, then humanity is preparing to leave its Deathworld, he finished. Silence engulfed the chamber. Because the galaxy had always assumed Earth contained humanity, but Earth had never been a prison. It had been a crucible. Greth's final scan swept the chamber and locked onto the central column's active interface. A data burst emerged, ancient, yet intact. Translation matrices strained, then resolved the header. Terran continuity directive phase. Ascendant status. Initiated. Thykel closed his eyes briefly. The Council feared human contact because Deathworld evolution produced violence. They were wrong. Deathworld evolution produced something far more unstoppable. A species that plans to survive even its own extinction. He opened his eyes to the feed of the buried archive still humming after tens of millennia. And to the burning city above it where humans fought, rescued, and endured. Commander Virel whispered, humans were never primitive. No, Thykel said softly. They were patient. Outside, Earth rotated beneath storms and fire. And somewhere beyond the planet, ancient human systems were waking. The discovery was undeniable now. Humanity was older, deeper, and more prepared than any galactic model had imagined. And the galaxy had just learned the most dangerous truth of all. Humans had been planning for this moment since before they first reached the stars. The first casualty did not scream, simply vanished from the telemetry grid. The ground probe designated K-17 had entered the lower vault corridor beneath the survival archive node. Its multi-spectrum sensors mapping structural layers that predated known human metallurgy by tens of millennia. Its last transmission showed a narrow passage reinforced by alloy ribs grown through bedrock like fossilized bone. Then the signal dissolved into static. No impact, no overload, no atmospheric disruption. Just absence. On the tactical display, its icon dimmed to black. Signal loss, Kreth said too quickly. Tempting reacquisition, he flooded the corridor with active scans. Nothing returned, no debris, no energy residue, no structural collapse. The probe had not been destroyed. It had been removed. Varel's crest flattened in reflexive alarm. Environmental hazard? Negative, Kreth said. All conditions stable. No kinetic event detected. Thackle stared at the empty corridor feed, the last frozen frame of intact architecture still glowing on the screen. Something inside that structure can erase matter without disturbance, he said. No one contradicted him. Second probe, K-21, was dispatched down the same path. Its sensors extended in cautious arcs, mapping each centimeter before physical advance. It reached the exact coordinates of K-17's disappearance and halted. The corridor ahead looked identical to every section before it. Smooth alloy ribs, root intrusion, mineral deposits, nothing moved. K-21 extended a manipulator arm into the space where K-17 had vanished. The arm disappeared, not cut, not burned, not displaced, gone. The remaining probe body remained intact, still anchored behind the threshold. Sensors recorded the arm's mass ceasing to exist at a precise plane that was not visually detectable. Varel whispered, a boundary. Kreth's voice dropped. A field, or a filter. Thakel felt dread coiled deeper. Humans built extinction archives, he said. They would not leave them unprotected. K-21 retracted its remaining appendages and reversed. The lost arm did not reappear. Whatever lay ahead did not destroy. It excluded. And only what qualified could pass. The implication formed with chilling clarity. The archive recognized authorized biology. Everything else was erased. Kell exhaled slowly. We are trespassing in a species-restricted system. The chamber fell silent except for the distant groan of the axiom of Mercy's hull. Adjusting to atmospheric shear. Above the ruin, the forest canopy shifted in wind patterns too irregular to be meteorological. Trees leaned, recovered, leaned again. Animal signatures moved through undergrowth in complex avoidance arcs around the buried structure, as if instinct guided them away from something they could not perceive. Commander Varel said, local fauna are avoiding the installation perimeter, even apex predators, because they detect it, the Kell said. Yes, but humans did not remove it. The meaning landed heavily. Earth's most lethal organisms instinctively avoided the human archive, which meant humans had integrated the installation into the ecosystem without triggering fear responses in themselves. The planet reacted to it, but humans did not. Kreth shifted feeds to orbital sensors. Commander, additional anomaly. The city conflict zone is spreading toward this region. Population movement vectors converging on forested highlands. The Kell's gaze sharpened. They are coming here. Yes. Why? Kreth hesitated. We are intercepting human communications, fragmented, repeating coordinates matching the archive location. Virel's voice dropped. They know it exists. Or, Thakil said quietly, something is guiding them. The coded orbital transmissions labeled Protocol Ascendant pulsed again through the Sol system, stronger now. The buried node's signal amplitude rose in synchrony. Ancient emergency systems waking across a death world, and humans moving toward them. A third probe, K-32, approached the exclusion boundary with extreme caution. Its sensors mapped the invisible plane where matter ceased. It deployed particulate tracers, microscopic dust clouds drifting forward. Half the cloud vanished. The other half drifted back intact. A perfect division in space. Selective permeability, Virel murmured. Authorization-based. Biological signature lock, Kreth said. Thakel nodded once. Human-only passage. K-32. Attempted spectral penetration. Scans failed beyond the boundary. Data returned null, as if space itself stopped. Then, without warning, the probe's internal systems flickered. Power fluctuations spiked, telemetry scrambled. And for 0.8 seconds, the feed showed something inside the forbidden corridor beyond the plane. A shape, tall, bipedal, stationary. The image collapsed into noise. K-32 rebooted. Systems nominal. Replay, the Kel ordered. The fragment expanded on screen. Distorted, grainy, but unmistakable. A silhouette inside the archive interior where no probe could exist. Virel's respiration hitched. Something is there. Kreth swallowed.
Ow.
But nothing living should survive beyond the filter, except humans. The Kel did not speak. Because the shape had not moved. It had simply been present. Watching, a tremor ran through the forest canopy above the ruin. Wind shifted direction without meteorological cause. Animal signatures scattered outward in expanding rings. The terrain is reacting, Virel said. To what? Kreth asked. Thakil answered. To activation. Far above, in orbit, the Axiom of Mercy sensors detected new emissions from Earth's crust. Not volcanic. Not tectonic. Artificial. Multiple points across continents, flaring in synchronized bursts. Archive nodes, Virel whispered. Awakening, Thakil said. The Deathworld itself seemed to pulse. Storm systems intensified. Lightning webs thickened. Atmospheric ionization rose. Electromagnetic noise surged across the spectrum. It was as if Earth's biosphere and its buried human constructs were entering resonance, and only humans moved toward the epicenters. The city evacuees now streamed along forest roads toward the highlands. Thermal feeds showed exhausted figures carrying supplies, injured companions, children. Despite devastation, their trajectory remained precise, toward the archive. They were not fleeing randomly. They were responding to a call, Commander Kreth said, voice tight. We are detecting low-power radio transmissions emanating from the archive entrance. Human language. Repeating. Translate, the Kel said. The audio resolved through interference. Human voice, mechanical. Degraded by age, yet clear in cadence. If you hear this, you are not the last continuity stands ascendant path active authorized species. Human proceed. Virel's crest quivered. It is. Welcoming them. Yes, the Kel said. And excluding everything else, Kreth added. The corridor boundary, where probes vanished, remained silent. Beyond it, the silhouette did not reappear. But its absence felt deliberate, watching without being seen. A new alarm struck the chamber. Commander Kreth snapped. Orbital anomaly and known objects emerging from subsurface beneath archive coordinates. Small mass. Ascending through canopy, the viewport shifted to infrared. Shapes rose from forest floor around the ruin-angular constructs, shedding soil and roots as they surfaced. Metallic limbs unfolded. Sensor clusters ignited in cold blue light. Autonomous defense units. They lifted silently into air, hovering above treetops, forming a perimeter around the installation. Defense constructs active, Virel said, horror threaded with awe. After tens of thousands of years, awaiting humans, Thakil said. The constructs did not target wildlife. They did not attack evacuees approaching from afar. They simply held position, scanning outward. Guardians recognizing authorized species and detecting intruders. One construct rotated abruptly toward a hidden probe K-44 positioned in canopy shadow. Before Kreth could withdraw it, a beam-thin white absolute crossed the space. K-44 ceased. No explosion. No debris. Just nothing. A perfect absence where the probe had been. Virel recoiled. Erasure again. Selective annihilation, Kreth said hoarsely. Thakil watched the defense ring tighten. Human constructs, eliminating non-human observers with surgical precision. Without harming any native life nearby, the difference was intentional. The message was clear. Humans may approach. Everything else is trespass. The evacuee column reached the forest edge. Humans paused, staring at the hovering constructs above the ruin. Fear markers spiked in their physiology, heart rate, respiration, stress hormones, yet they did not flee. One stepped forward. An adult female, injured arm bound, clothing torn by fire. She raised her uninjured hand slowly. The constructs did not attack. They shifted, opening a path. Virel's voice trembled. "You recognize her?" "Yes," Thakel said. Species authorization confirmed. The woman approached the buried entrance. Others followed, carrying injured companions. The defense units adjusted continuously, allowing only humans through the perimeter. No wildlife crossed. No alien probe survived within range. The Deathworld installation had awakened fully. Inside the archive corridor, beyond the erasure boundary, the silhouette flickered again on sensors for a fraction of a second closer now, facing outward, as if anticipating arrival. Kreth whispered, "Commander." "Something inside is moving toward the entrance." The Kel felt the weight of the moment press down. For cycles they had studied humans as myth, anomaly, threat, and now the first living contact approached, not between alien and human, but between ancient human system and modern human survivor. And they were witnessing it. The injured woman reached the threshold, where probes vanished. She hesitated only a breath, then stepped through. She did not disappear. She passed intact beyond the boundary. Authorized. Behind her, others followed. The archive accepted them. Within the forbidden corridor, sensors flared. The silhouette resolved fully at last. Tall, humanoid, metallic, standing motionless before the arriving humans.
Oh.
An ancient construct awaiting its species. Virel's voice broke into a whisper of awe and fear. "Commander, that is not human." "No," Thakel said softly. "But it belongs to them." The construct's optics ignited in pale light as the first human approached. Contact imminent. And everything the galaxy believed about humanity stood on the edge of her vision. The forest fell silent, not the ordinary quiet of night settling over terrain, nor the predator's stillness that precedes a hunt. This was deeper, structural, as if the Deathworld itself held breath while something, older than any living species, stirred beneath its roots. Above the buried archive, the autonomous defense constructs maintained their perimeter without movement. Their optics glowed steady in the dark canopy, casting faint geometric shadows across bark and soil. Beyond them, displaced humans clustered in exhausted groups, clutching supplies and injured kin, waiting for whatever the ancient installation would offer them next. Inside the forbidden corridor, beyond the species filter, the metallic sentinel faced them. And in orbit, aboard the Axiom of Mercy, Commander Thakel ordered all external probes to hold position. No transmission, only observation. The pause settled across the expedition like frost. For the first time since entering Sol, no one spoke. Because what unfolded below was no longer merely xenological discovery. It was contact between humanity and its own past, and the alien witnesses were not meant to be present. Thakel stood alone again in the observation chamber, the curve of Earth filling the viewport. He let the silence stretch deliberately, allowing his cognition to reorder around what they had learned. He had trained his entire life for encounters with unknown intelligence. None of that training applied here. The species of Corelli evolved on a dim, oceanic world orbiting a stable red dwarf. Gravity low, climate uniform, predation rare. Their ancestors had drifted in warm currents for millions of years before cognition emerged. Cooperation arising through shared sensory fields rather than competition. Violence was almost unknown in their evolutionary record. Survival did not require aggression. Intelligence grew in calm. Corel doctrine held that advanced civilizations arose only where environments allowed stability long enough for contemplation to replace reaction. Deathworlds produce feral organisms, not philosophers, not engineers. Not civilizations capable of continuity planning across extinction scales. Humans violated that belief at every level. The Kel's training had framed humans as theoretical hazards if they existed. His assignment to the Sol perimeter had been considered prestigious but safe. Monitor a sealed system, confirm no outward expansion, reinforce council containment. He had expected distant observation of a primitive species struggling against its lethal world. Instead, he found a civilization that had anticipated planetary annihilation before discovering metallurgy. His crest tightened. Humans had not merely survived Earth. They had assumed Earth would kill them and built species-level countermeasures. That realization gnawed at the foundations of Corel philosophy. Because if intelligence could emerge in chaos rather than stability, then everything the Council believed about life's trajectory was incomplete. Behind him, Virel entered quietly. She did not announce herself. Corel's social norms did not require it. Sensory awareness usually made presence obvious. But tonight she moved like a predator, species soft, cautious, uncertain. "Commander," she said after a long pause, "the humans are still entering the archive." He inclined his head slightly. Yes, they trust it. Yes. She stepped closer to the viewport, studying the storm bands rolling across continents. "I do not understand them," she said. "They fear the constructs. Their physiology shows it, yet they approach. They accept guidance from machines older than their recorded history." The Kel considered. They evolved under constant existential threat, he said. "Any system offering survival, even unknown, is preferable to extinction." Virel shook her head slowly. "No, that is not sufficient explanation. Many species face extinction pressure. None build continuity networks tens of thousands of years before spaceflight. None encode emergency beacons in languages not yet formed. None design planetary-scale archives assuming civilization collapse." She turned to him, eyes wide. "Commander, humans planned for disaster before they understood disaster scientifically." He met her gaze. "Yes," the word hung between them like a fracture line. Virel whispered, "That is not adaptation. That is doctrine." The concept sharpened instantly in Thekel's mind. Not instinct, not culture, doctrine. A survival ideology embedded so deeply in human cognition that it preceded knowledge itself. He spoke slowly. "Protocol ascendant," Virel's crest flattened. "The orbital signal, yes. And the archive nodes respond to it." "Yes," she swallowed. "Then protocol ascendant is not merely a technical network. It is the operational expression of human survival doctrine." The Kel nodded once. "Humans believe extinction is inevitable," he said, "so they ensure continuity beyond it." Virel exhaled shakily. "Yes," the words settled heavy, because that cost extended beyond their species. A doctrine that justified survival above all else would not stop at planetary boundaries. It would expand, consume resources, override obstacles. The galaxy threatened human continuity. Humans would remove the galaxy as an obstacle. The antagonist resolved itself not as a person, not even as a faction, but as a principle older than civilization. Humanity must not die. Everything else negotiable. Virel's voice dropped. The Council feared human aggression. But aggression is only a tool. The real danger is this doctrine. "Yes," Thekel said softly. "Species convinced its extinction is unacceptable." They stood in silence while lightning crawled across Earth's horizon. Behind them, footsteps approached firmer, heavier. Tactical liaison Kreth entered without hesitation, posture rigid with unresolved tension. "Commander," he said, "team divisions are escalating." Thekel turned. "Explain." Kreth's jaw tightened. His species, the Ral, evolved on a high-gravity predator world. Survival demanded aggression, hierarchy, dominance, while culture valued strength and preemptive action. They were among the few species comfortable with Deathworld conditions, and even Kreth looked unsettled. "Half the expedition believes we must withdraw immediately," he said. "They assess humanity as an existential galactic threat." The recommendation: transmit full findings to Council and initiate containment reinforcement before humans achieve off-world expansion. And the other half, Thekel asked. "They believe humanity represents the most extraordinary survival intelligence ever encountered," Kreth said. "They argue contact could redefine evolutionary science. They advocate continued observation, interaction," Virel added quietly, "and a minority believe we should eliminate the archive nodes now, while humanity remains planet-bound." The chamber cooled perceptibly. Preemptive extermination. Thekel absorbed the implications without visible reaction. "Your position?" he asked Kreth. The role officer hesitated, a rare breach of his species' decisiveness. "I was trained to neutralize threats before they mature," Kreth said. "Humans qualify." He looked toward Earth. "But I've never seen a species endure what they endure," he added. "They fight their world and each other, yet rescue strangers and fire. They build extinction backups before astronomy." They laugh while dying. His voice lowered. I do not know whether they are monsters or miracles. The phrase echoed Viral's earlier thought. Humans as both. The Kel felt the truth of it settle. Humans violated every binary classification. They were brutal and compassionate, self-destructive and cooperative, fragile and unstoppable. Deathworld evolution had not simplified them. It had intensified everything. He turned back to the viewport, watching storms coil around continents where archive nodes now awakened beneath soil and stone. Council doctrine assumes species arise in stability, he said. Humans arose in catastrophe. They are not aberration. They are alternate trajectory. Viral whispered, one shaped by extinction expectation. Yes, and now that trajectory is activating beyond their planet, Kreth said. Yes. Silence again. Then Virel spoke the question none had voiced fully. Commander, what if humans did not merely adapt to Earth? He turned slightly. What if they adapted Earth to themselves? The idea struck like gravitational shear. Explain, Thea said. Virel pulled up planetary data overlays. Earth's lethality is extreme, but strangely balanced. Oxygen high, yet tolerable. Gravity heavy, yet survivable. Predation intense, yet not total. Climate catastrophic, yet cyclic rather than terminal. Every lethal factor overlaps, but within survivable margins for humans specifically. She highlighted comparative tolerances. Most species could survive one or two of these parameters. Humans alone sit at the intersection, where all are deadly, but not instantly fatal, as if the planet's hostility is tuned to human thresholds. Kreth frowned. You suggest humans engineered planetary conditions? Not consciously, Virel said, but over deep time? Bioengineering ecosystems? Altering atmospheric composition? Shaping predation networks? If early humans or pre-humans modified Earth to maintain extinction pressure without total collapse, she stopped, realizing the implication. They created a perpetual crucible, she whispered. To ensure their species remained survival optimized, the Kel felt awe and terror entwine. A species that not only endured a death world, but curated it, maintained lethal pressure to prevent complacency. Ensured every generation faced catastrophe and survived, engineered themselves through environmental brutality. Kreth exhaled slowly. That would make humanity not a product of Earth, but Earth a product of humanity, the Kel finished. The power dynamic inverted. Humans were not victims of a hostile planet. They were architects of a selective hell that forged them into continuity organisms. And now that forging phase was ending. Archive nodes awakening. Protocol ascendant broadcasting. Defense constructs rising. Humans gathering. Species graduating from planetary crucible to galactic stage. Virel's voice trembled. Commander, if this is true, humanity is far older than its recorded civilization. Its survival doctrine predates history. Its engineering predates industry. We are not observing an emerging species. She looked at him fully. We are witnessing an awakening one. The silence that followed was absolute. The Kel understood then why fear and fascination tore equally through him. Humans were everything, Corell. Evolution was not. Violent, resilient, relentless, adaptive under terror. They were also everything Corell philosophy valued. Cooperative, future planning, continuity-driven, collective beyond individual. They embodied extremes his species had separated, and now they were leaving their death world. If humanity expanded, guided by Protocol Ascendant, the galaxy would face a civilization that considered extinction unacceptable at species level, one that prepared across millennia, one that might reshape environments and itself to ensure survival, at any cost. Kreth broke the silence. Commander, Council orders are clear. Contact forbidden. Withdrawal recommended. Intervention debated. Yes, Thykel said. And yet you have not ordered retreat. No. Virel looked at him carefully. Why? He watched lightning crawl across Earth's oceans. Because if humanity is awakening, he said softly, containment is already obsolete. They absorbed that, he continued. The question is no longer whether humans expand. It is how they perceive the galaxy when they do. Virel's eyes widened. You believe first observation shapes first response? Yes. If they encounter only hostility, they will classify the galaxy as threat to continuity and respond accordingly, Kreth said grimly. Thalkel nodded. But if they encounter witnesses who seek understanding, then perhaps their doctrine integrates coexistence, Virel finished. The stakes crystallized. Not just survival of humans, survival of everyone else. Because humanity's doctrine was immutable, extinction unacceptable. The galaxy could become partner or obstacle. The Kel turned from the viewport. My species evolved in calm, he said. We believed stability was prerequisite for wisdom. Humans prove wisdom can emerge from chaos. He met their gazes. I will not let fear dictate our first step toward them. Kreth's posture stiffened. Commander, continued proximity is lethal risk. Defense constructs already destroyed probes. Archive filters erase non-humans. Kael Ascendant may classify us as threat. Yes, Thakel said. And you still choose to continue? Yes. Virel searched his expression. Is that duty or curiosity? Considered. Both, he said. And something else. What? Kel looked back to Earth, where humans entered their ancient refuge and constructs awoke around them. Respect the word. Settled like gravity. Because he recognized in humanity something his species had never known. The will to survive anything. He turned fully to his officers. We proceed, he said. Kreth inhaled sharply. Into archive proximity? Yes. Despite species exclusion defenses? Yes. Despite unknown constructs and doctrine? Yes. Silence. Then Kreth inclined his head, slowly the raw gesture of acceptance before danger. Virel followed, crest lowering in solemn assent. The choice was made. Observation would become approach, and approach might become contact. Below them, the archive lights brightened as more humans crossed the threshold. Within the corridor, the ancient construct stood waiting. Above, the alien vessel altered orbit, descending deliberately toward the place no non-human was meant to stand. The first alien fleet arrived without stealth. It emerged at the outer boundary of the Sol system, in a formation so vast that even Earth's archaic telescopes detected the gravitational distortions hours before the ships themselves resolved against the starfield. Drives flared across interplanetary darkness in cold geometric lines, vectors converging toward the blue planet that had been quarantined for millennia. On the tactical displays aboard the Axiom of Mercy, hundreds of transponder signatures ignited simultaneously. Council, Armada, containment task forces, extermination contingents, and the silent, heavier silhouettes of observer vessels that had come not to act, but to witness whatever humanity was becoming. Kreth's voice hardened as identification codes resolved. Commander, the Council has mobilized Tier 1 fleets. This is not reconnaissance. This is enforcement. The Kel did not move. He watched the orbital map bloom with converging trajectories, every path leading toward Earth's atmosphere, toward the very region where ancient Terran systems were awakening. They are early, Virel whispered. They should not have arrived for another cycle. They intercepted Protocol Ascendant, the Kel said, and understood its implication. Silence, because the implication was species-level escalation. The galaxy had learned that humanity possessed extinction-resilient infrastructure buried across its Deathworld and that it was activating. The Council would not allow such a species to expand unchecked. Transmission burst tore across the command deck, override priority absolute. The Council's seal pulsed in crimson across every surface. Kreth swallowed. Directive incoming. The message unfolded in formal diplomatic cadence, stripped of emotion. Sharpened by urgency, Galactic Council emergency mandate subject. Sol system containment failure status. Deathworld species activation confirmed all. Vessels in proximity shall cease approach, withdraw to safe orbital distance, await fleet containment. Action secondary protocol. If Terran infrastructure achieves extraplanetary capability, authorized response. Species termination, the final line lingered. Species termination. Virel's crest flattened against her skull. They are invoking extermination authority. Kreth's jaw tightened. If humanity leaves Earth, the Council will eradicate them. The Kel read the mandate again without reaction. He had expected it. A Deathworld species proving extinction-resistant violated every stability doctrine the Council enforced across the galaxy. Civilizations arose slowly, predictably, under controlled conditions. Expansion was regulated. Catastrophic species were contained or removed before they destabilized interstellar equilibrium. Humans had never been evaluated under those frameworks, because no species had ever evolved expecting extinction and preparing for it across planetary time. The Council's fear was rational, which did not make it correct. Below them, Earth's night side glowed brighter. Archive nodes across continents flared into synchronized activation, their buried structures shedding soil and vegetation as autonomous systems rose to the surface. Infrared feeds revealed geometric lattice emerging from tundra, desert, jungle, ocean floor, thousands of ancient installations awakening in harmonic sequence. Global network Varel breathed, not isolated sites, planet-wide continuity grid. Kreth scanned rapidly. Defense constructs rising at every node. Atmospheric energy signatures climbing, planetary magnetic field fluctuating. The Kel watched the planet change in real time. Humanity had seeded survival systems across its world long before recorded history, and now every seed was sprouting, Commander Kreth said, voice tightening. We are detecting power surges beneath oceanic crust, structures ascending from seabed. The feed shifted. From abyssal darkness, colossal frameworks rose through water columns, displacing entire ecosystems. Marine megafauna scattered in shockwaves as metallic towers broke the surface in remote seas. Their spines unfolded, projecting energy grids into atmosphere, planetary defense awakening, Earth itself transforming into infrastructure, Varel whispered. They prepared not merely to survive extinction, but to restart civilization afterward. Yes, Thakel said. And now, Kreth added grimly, they are preparing to defend it. The Council fleet accelerated. Hundreds of warships entered inter-system trajectories, weapon systems warming. Their formation geometry spoke plainly. Encirclement of Earth, denial of escape vectors, readiness for orbital sterilization if required, containment at planetary scale. Thakel felt the narrowing window. If the Council struck before humanity's systems matured, Earth would become another erased biosphere, a Deathworld extinguished to preserve galactic order. If humanity's systems activated fully before Council engagement, the balance of power might invert. A second transmission burst cut through command channels, this one from within the Armada. Not Council authority, Fleet Command Conference, open to all vessels in theater. Kreth rooted it automatically. Dozens of alien commanders appeared in holographic lattice, species of many worlds, faces hardened by doctrine and fear. Voices overlapped, debate already raging. Cannot allow Terran expansion, species demonstrates extinction-resilient architecture. Precedent, catastrophic. Observe first, exterminate before off-world capability achieved. The chamber filled with argument. One commander, a massive avian warlord from a high-gravity empire, cut through the noise. Humans seeded survival systems across their planet before spaceflight. That indicates long-term expansion intent. They plan to return after extinction events. Such species will not accept containment. Preemptive termination is justified. Another voice countered a crystalline intelligence whose species valued preservation. Termination of an emergent civilization violates Council Charter. Humanity has not attacked interstellar actors. We observe defensive activation only. A third spoke, cold and mathematical. Risk assessment. If humans achieve interstellar reach with extinction-resilient doctrine, probability of galactic conflict rises to 72% within 10 millennia. Containment now prevents systemic destabilization, Varel whispered. They are debating genocide as risk management. Thakel said nothing, because beneath the political calculus lay a deeper terror. A species that could not be erased by catastrophe might also be impossible to control. The debate sharpened when planetary feeds surged again. Across continents, human populations reached archive nodes. Cities emptied toward ancient refuges. Defense constructs guided them. Autonomous transports emerged from underground vaults. Medical facilities unfolded. Energy grids stabilized. Human technology activating at civilizational scale. And then, the ecological consequences began. As continental nodes rose, tectonic stress redistributed. Fault lines slipped. Earthquakes rippled across regions where structures breached crust. Volcano chains stirred under altered pressure fields. Ocean currents shifted as seabed towers displaced water masses. Storm systems intensified under atmospheric ionization. Planetary awakening destabilized the biosphere. Commander Kreth said, voice strained. Activation is triggering ecological cascade. This world is entering forced geological transition. Yes, Thakel said softly. The crucible is breaking. Earth had forged humanity through lethal equilibrium, and that equilibrium was collapsing as human infrastructure surfaced. The Deathworld was shedding its skin. Council fleets interpreted the same data differently. Planet destabilizing Terran technology causing ecological collapse, biosphere failure imminent. Humans will leave a dead world. Containment window closing. Weapon systems across the armada shifted to active state. Orbital annihilation prepared. Kreth's claws dug into the console edge. Commander, if they fire, every archive node and human cluster dies. Yes. And humanity ends before expansion? Yes. Varel's voice trembled. Lest some nodes already possess launch capability? Silence. Because that possibility reframed everything. If even one archive node could send humans off-world, the species would escape termination. Thakel turned sharply. Scan for propulsion signatures. Kreth obeyed instantly. Sensors swept the globe. At first, nothing beyond defense grids and energy spines. Then contact, Kreth whispered. Multiple nodes generating vertical energy columns. Launch architecture emerging. The feed zoomed. From beneath continental vaults, structures unfolded into sky-piercing towers. Their cores glowed with power densities rivaling starship drives. Around them, humans gathered under construct guidance, entering chambers along ascending shafts. Varel's eyes widened. Ascension platforms. Thakel felt the moment crystallize. Humans were not merely surviving Earth's collapse. They were leaving. The Council Armada saw it too. Fleet command channels erupted. Terran launch imminent, containment breach. Fire authorization requested. Delay until trajectory confirmed. No delay, terminate now. The extermination debate reached its peak. And then alien casualties began. Containment cruiser descending toward low orbit crossed into range of newly risen defense spires. It broadcast standard Council non-aggression codes. No hostile action. The spires responded with light. A lattice beam struck the cruiser's hull, not explosive, not kinetic. Structural cohesion simply ceased. The vessel unraveled into particulate dust across vacuum, its crew erased before alarms could sound. The fleet froze. Planetary defense systems were not symbolic, they were absolute. Humans are defending launch zones, Kreth said hoarsely. No, Thakel said. He watched the spire's targeting pattern. It targeted only the vessel entering descent vector toward Ascension Tower, Varel realized. Selective exclusion again. Yes, defense did not attack orbiting ships. Only those approaching human exit paths. The message mirrored the archive filter. Humans may pass, others may not interfere. Council fear intensified instantly. Terran systems can destroy starships. Planetary defenses exceed projection. Delay risks escalation. Terminate before more launch. Weapons arrays across the Armada aligned toward Earth's surface. The largest fleet in known space prepared to annihilate a single world, and below, Ascension towers flared brighter. Human awakening signals peaked. Thakel watched the convergence fleet above, towers below, biosphere fracturing between them, understood scale beyond species. If the Council fired, it would commit galactic genocide to preserve stability. If humans escaped, they would carry extinction-resilient doctrine into interstellar expansion. Either path altered civilization across the galaxy. This was no longer first contact. It was evolutionary collision. Kreth's voice shook. Commander, our vessel remains within planetary defense envelope. If Council fires or if towers perceive us as threat, we die, Thakel said calmly. Varel looked at him, terror and awe entwined. And you still choose to remain? Yes. Why? He watched the first Ascension Tower open. Within its core, silhouettes of humans rose in luminous chambers, lifted toward sky by forces older than their recorded history. Because humanity is not merely leaving Earth, he said. It is revealing itself. Virel frowned. Revealing what? The answer came not from him. It came from deep space. Beyond the Council Armada, beyond planetary orbit, sensors detected new arrivals, massive signatures emerging from translation points far outside Sol's gravity well. Not Council vessels. It's not known species. Ancient geometries gliding toward the system with deliberate calm. Kreth stared at the data in disbelief. Commander, unidentified fleet. Scale. Immense technology. Per Council architecture. The Armada's attention fractured as new contacts resolved. Ships shaped unlike any current designs, smooth, archaic, bearing markings that echoed symbols seen inside the Terran archive. Virel whispered, "Those are human." "No," Thakel said softly. The truth crystallized in full. They are older. The approaching vessels broadcast a signal across all channels, language matrices aligning instantly. A human voice spoke clear, unaged by time. Continuity confirmed. Earth nodes awakened. Species persistence maintained. The fleet fell silent. Because the signal did not originate from Earth, it came from the incoming Armada, and it ended with the phrase that shattered every assumption the galaxy held: "We never left." The sky above the Deathworld was no longer dark. It had become crowded. Ships gathered in orbit in layered formations that reflected centuries of interstellar fear. Sleek. Containment cruisers from the Coalition floated beside angular extermination carriers, whose hulls bore scars from other extinction campaigns. Observation arrays unfolded like metallic flowers, drinking in every radiation surge, tectonic pulse. An electromagnetic anomaly rising from the planet below. No species in the modern galaxy had ever committed this many assets to a single biosphere. No world classified merely as feral origin had ever warranted fleet consensus mobilization. But this world was no longer classified. It had been redefined in the last 72 hours. Terran Origin engineered Deathworld. The designation alone had fractured the Coalition Senate. Below the fleet, continents moved. Tectonic plates that had slumbered for millennia began to slide with purposeful rhythm, their collisions sending harmonic shockwaves through mantle and crust. Volcano chains ignited in synchronous arcs that traced geometric lines across hemispheres. Storm systems spiraled into organized bands, their lightning patterns forming repeating intervals that matched no natural climate model. Even orbital analysts trained to interpret planetary chaos recognized intention in the upheaval. The planet was waking. Something on its surface was directing it. The expedition survivors stood within the canyon ruin where humanity had first revealed its impossible persistence. Stone pillars etched with Terran symbols now pulsed with faint auroral light. Dust that had lain undisturbed for ages drifted upward against gravity gradients that fluctuated in measured cycles. The air itself tasted charged, ionized by awakening systems buried beneath continents. The protagonist felt it through every sensory organ their species possessed. The presence that had watched them since first descent had shifted from observation to proximity. Not nearer in distance, nearer in awareness. They stood motionless beside the ancient human structure, their suit recording atmospheric spectra that changed faster than analysis could complete. Microseismic tremors moved through the ground in patterned bursts, each wave aligning with pulses from the ruin's core. It felt less like standing on a planet and more like standing inside a vast organism rediscovering circulation. Fear should have dominated them. Instead, fascination surged stronger. They had trained their entire life to interpret Deathworld threats as chaotic, instinct-driven, probabilistic. Predators hunted, storms formed, tectonics fractured. Survival was adaptation against indifferent violence. Yet everything here suggested design, layered upon design, intention, embedded within geological time. Humanity had not merely survived this world, humanity had shaped it. The realization carried both terror and reverence. Behind them, the surviving members of the expedition maintained distance from the ruin. Their divisions had hardened since orbital fleet arrival. The Fear faction prepared emergency ascent protocols, arguing that continued surface presence constituted existential contamination risk. The aggression faction demanded immediate orbital sterilization before planetary systems reached full activation. Only the curiosity faction remained near the protagonist, their sensors open, their postures tense with the same conflicted awe. They all felt it.
The sense of being evaluated?
Above, fleet transmissions intensified. Coalition command networks flooded local channels with directives that contradicted themselves as rapidly as they formed. Containment advocates insisted humanity's engineered survival systems represented a planetary-scale quarantine mechanism, designed to isolate Terran biology after extinction-level catastrophe. Extermination advocates countered that any species capable of terraforming its own Deathworld into a defensive intelligence constituted an unacceptable future threat. Observation councils pleaded for delay, arguing that contact with a self-directed Deathworld civilization could redefine galactic anthropology forever. No consensus held, because signals from the planet began answering. Coded transmissions rose through the atmosphere in tight beam bursts aimed not at the expedition but at orbiting fleet nodes. The language was ancient Terran, reconstructed by Coalition archives from scattered ruins across multiple sectors. Yet the syntax carried updates, evolutions, contextual references to galactic history that humans should never have known after extinction. The messages were simple: containment, integrity, preserved, survival network, operational, Terran lineage, persistent. Fleet silence followed each reception. The protagonist listened to the translations repeating in their neural interface. Persistent. The word echoed against everything Coalition doctrine had taught. Humanity was extinct. Humanity had vanished after self-inflicted ecological collapse. Humanity survived only in scattered artifacts and Deathworld myths. Yet every structure on this planet, every awakening tectonic engine, every autonomous defense construct suggested continuity rather than relic. The extinction had not been failure. It had been preparation. They turned toward the ruin's central aperture, where auroral light thickened into coherent beams. Stone surfaces separated along seams invisible moments earlier, revealing chambers beneath that glowed with bioluminescent circuitry. Shapes moved within the illumination, not machines alone, not constructs. Organic silhouettes intertwined with technological frameworks that defied categorical separation, their breaths stilled. The presence that had watched them for days now resolved into form. It stepped forward with deliberate calm, emerging from the ruin like a memory-given body. Its shape aligned with Terran morphology archived across Coalition databases, yet altered by adaptations no anthropological model had predicted. Skin carried embedded crystalline matrices that refracted the ruin's light into shifting patterns. Limbs held both biological musculature and exoskeletal reinforcement, grown rather than manufactured. Eyes reflected spectra beyond visible range, their gaze stabilizing on the protagonist with recognition unclouded by surprise. A human, alive. Not awakened from stasis. Not reconstructed. Living continuity. The expedition froze. Even aggression faction members lowered weapons as instinctive awe overrode training. The being before them radiated neither hostility nor submission. Its posture conveyed equilibrium with the environment itself, as if gravity, atmosphere, and tectonics adjusted subtly to accommodate its presence. When it spoke, the voice carried through translation layers without distortion. "We observed your descent." The language was Coalition standard, spoken with tonal resonance that suggested learned fluency rather than recovered artifact. The protagonist's cognitive systems faltered momentarily, struggling to reconcile impossibility with sensory confirmation. Humans had never been extinct. They had withdrawn. The human's gaze moved across the assembled aliens, pausing on each species with quiet evaluation. No aggression emanated from it, no fear, only a depth of perception that felt geological impatience. "You interpret survival as anomaly," it continued. "Your models calculate probability against hostile variables. You do not include self-modification as environmental constant." The protagonist felt the words penetrate every assumption they carried. Humans had not violated survival probability models. They had rewritten themselves until probability aligned with intent. "Your fleet prepares containment," the human said, its attention shifting briefly toward orbit visible through the canyon opening, or eradication. Both responses are consistent with civilizations encountering adaptive species beyond predictive scope. No accusation colored the statement. Only observation. Behind the human, deeper chambers of the ruin brightened. Structures unfolded like petals, revealing networks that extended downward into planetary crust. The protagonist's sensors mapped vast conduits linking tectonic engines, atmospheric regulators, and biospheric matrices. Humanity had integrated with the Deathworld so completely that planetary processes responded to human neural patterns. The Deathworld was human habitat, human shield, human extension. You seeded survival systems, the protagonist said slowly, the realization crystallizing aloud. Cross-extinction thresholds. Geological, biological, technological. The human inclined its head slightly, acknowledging accuracy. We anticipated collapse, self-inflicted and external. We concluded extinction as species was less acceptable than transformation as environment. The words carried no pride, only fact. The supporting aliens murmured in stunned frequencies. Humans had engineered themselves and their world into inseparable continuity. Extinction events became evolutionary gates rather than terminal ends. Deathworld classification ceased to apply because the world itself was no longer hostile to its creators. The humans stepped closer. Gravitational fluctuations around it stabilized as if the planet compensated to maintain equilibrium. The protagonist's suit registered radiation levels dropping, atmospheric toxins neutralizing within a small radius. The environment adapted around human presence. You experience fear, the human said gently, and fascination, both irrational. Our survival required traits your civilizations suppress. The protagonist could not deny it. Humanity embodied everything the galaxy avoided: relentless adaptation, willingness to alter self, refusal to accept extinction as outcome. Violence had shaped them, so had hope. Terror of annihilation had driven them to merge biology with geology, culture with tectonics, memory with planetary systems. Why reveal yourselves now? The protagonist asked. The human's gaze lifted again, toward orbiting fleet formations. Because you arrived. Observation preceded contact. Contact precedes choice. You maintained isolation until external intelligence demonstrated persistence equivalent to our own. Equivalent persistence. The implication struck like tectonic impact. The expedition had survived descent. Hazards that killed megafauna and shattered constructs had not eliminated them. They had adapted, learned, continued. Humanity had watched and recognized kinship in survival drive. You judged us, the protagonist whispered. We evaluated the human, corrected softly. You did not retreat despite lethality. You remained despite fear. Those behaviors align with cooperative survival potential. Above, fleet transmissions erupted into chaos. Sensors detected planetary defense systems reaching full activation thresholds. Orbital trajectories shifted as containment cruisers attempted repositioning beyond newly formed gravitational gradients. Extermination carriers armed sterilization arrays that flickered uncertainly under interference fields rising from the planet's crust. Human technology awakening had expanded from local ruin to global network. Scale beyond one species, beyond one world. The human extended a hand toward the protagonist, not command, not demand. Invitation. Your civilizations face extinction curves, it said. Entropy accumulates. Adaptation ceilings approach. You debate containment of us because we represent divergence beyond your models. Yet survival across cosmic time requires similar transformation. The protagonist stared at the offered hand. Their training screamed caution. Contact with Deathworld species violated every coalition doctrine, yet everything they had witnessed dismantled the premise that humanity was merely Deathworld fauna. Humans were architects of their own evolution, engineers of planetary symbiosis, survivors who refused finality. Behind them, their team watched in silent shock. Above, fleets maneuvered between fear and aggression. Before them stood living proof that extinction had never claimed humanity. The galaxy had misread absence as annihilation. The human's voice softened. We were never alone, it said. Other worlds seeded similar paths. Survival networks dispersed across extinction frontiers. You encountered one node. The revelation expanded beyond comprehension. Humanity had not confined transformation to a single death world. They had spread survival systems across planets, perhaps across sectors, ensuring continuity regardless of localized catastrophe. They had planned return after extinction, except extinction never occurred. The protagonist reached forward. Their gloved limb met human skin, crystal surface. Contact transmitted data beyond sensory range, tectonic rhythms, atmospheric cycles, biospheric pulses, integrated with neural patterns. The human was not separate from the planet. It was interface and inhabitant simultaneously. Fear dissolved. Not because humanity lacked danger, but because its danger was inseparable from life. Above, fleets hesitated. Planetary defenses stabilized orbital zones without aggression. Human ruin around them unfolded fully, revealing chambers descending into luminous depths. Other forms moved below, more humans, adapted variations shaped by environments and epochs. Humanity persisted in multiplicity, not relic. The protagonist understood then why the galaxy had always feared them. Not for violence alone, but for refusal to die. The human withdrew its hand gently. Its gaze held both kindness and immeasurable age. "You must decide," it said. "Your civilizations will fear our persistence. They will attempt control or eradication. Yet you have seen what survival beyond extinction entails." The canyon trembled. Softly as tectonic engines synchronized globally, auroras brightened into daylight intensity. Orbiting fleets stabilized and enforced equilibrium fields generated by the awakened planet. Humanity's Deathworld had become active participant in galactic presence. The protagonist turned once toward the sky crowded with ships, then back to the human who embodied both terror and hope. Their entire understanding of life's limits had been rewritten in a single encounter. They stepped forward, not as conquerors, not as subject, as witness, as bridge. Silence settled across canyon and fleet alike. The pause before consequences rippled outward through civilizations unprepared for a mortal species. The human inclined its head in acknowledgement of choice made. Far above, coalition channels erupted with demands, fears, proposals, and warnings. None of them could undo what had been revealed. Humanity was not extinct. Humanity was not contained. Humanity had become something the galaxy had never faced, a species that treated death as phase rather than end. The protagonist felt awe expand into something steadier than fascination or terror. Understanding, the human turned slightly, gesturing toward the depths of the ruin where other Terrans waited. "Come," it said. "There is more you must see before your people decide our fate." The invitation carried weight beyond diplomacy. It offered knowledge capable of reshaping civilizations or destroying them through fear. The protagonist followed. Behind them, the Deathworld breathed in planetary cadence. Above, fleets held uncertain vigil. Across the galaxy, signals would soon carry the truth long buried beneath extinction myths. Humanity had endured. Humanity had changed. Humanity had never surrendered to oblivion. And the universe would now confront the consequence of a species whose greatest terror had never been violence, nor conquest, nor even domination. It had always been disappearance. The protagonist descended beside the living human into luminous depths. One final realization settled with quiet clarity. Survival on this scale was indistinguishable from transformation into something cosmic, something the galaxy could neither control nor erase. The question that would echo through every world and council chamber began forming already, inevitable as tectonic motion and evolutionary drive. What do you believe the galaxy truly feared, humanity's violence or its will to survive?